Hello, everyone. In this episode, I have one more young Indian with us, part of the Voice of the Young series. Right now, we have with us Utkarsh Singh. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Utkarsh.
Hi, Subodh. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I'm Utkarsh and I'm a context architect at 1001 Stories. We'll talk about what I do in a bit, but it's very fascinating how Subodh has talked about how Indian folks, young Indian folks, are looking at knowledge today, are have absorbed quite a bit of what's out there on the internet. And while we were having, some time back, both we were having a chat where you were talking about how college education doesn't feel enough, like it doesn't really prepare people to be employable. And I feel that's something that I might explore today as we go on talking. um I started out as a child who was pretty decent at academics. I won, my school. I represented my school for something known as Microsoft Create to Inspire. Back in class 9, before that, I was representing my state in lawn tennis. I played a couple of international lawn tennis events. I would win a lot of mock United Nation and all of those things. And then when I was in class 11th, I took up commerce. Did a couple year of commerce, went into Delhi University, studied there for 1 year, chose to drop out, not study economics. um, and then I chose a psychology, a BSc in psychology, and I ended up doing a lot of strategy and doing a lot of research for my career. All in all, when you look at someone, uh, a guy, who's from Bihar, who's from Patna, um, you do want to follow a lot of traditional, career pathways. You're trying to become an engineer. You're trying to become a doctor. If not anything, you're trying to crack the UPSC. And I have absolute respect for all of those things because, um, whether you believe it or not, a sense of security is critical when folks come from, a middle class family from states which were previously known as Bimaru states. um, and it comes from a place of scarcity. It comes from a constant feeling of threat. It comes from the idea that if a famine hits, if a cyclone hits, if a flood hits, everything can be taken away from you. So what's really secure? A government job is secure, a professional degree is secure. But when there are people who want to explore their creative sides, who there are, uh, you know I know a lot of kids like me who had a lot of energy, had a lot of interest in multiple things. They simply couldn't figure the way out of this. They simply couldn't know where to go, what to do. And the way we understand knowledge today has a lot to do with that. um, I've been talking to a lot of folks, and the more I go deeper into the field that I'm studying right now, I'm working in right now, behavioral science. A lot of understanding why people do what they do. I get texts all the time from folks who have done their masters in the UK, in the US, Germany, even India, and they ask me about how do I succeed? How do I succeed in this field? What books should I study? More often than not, I try to look deeper into the desires of folks who are looking at knowledge
We had
yeah.
an internet glitch, which is over. Utkarsh will now please continue.
Yeah. So, and I get asked all of those questions. And when I look at the deeper desire of why questions about being successful are asked by folks who haven't even tried out being in the job market yet, it comes from the consistent, bombardment that's happening on social media about, these are the certain metrics of success. You get a car, you get a house, you get a family, and you do 10,000 different things. It's a lot of social signaling, it's a lot of self gratification, it's a lot of, I want this, I should have this by this age,
Hmm.
I should have at least this much amount in my stocks
Hmm.
at this certain point of time. These are all signals of success, metrics of success. And then you have different financial influences, different sorts of influences telling you what the blueprint of life is supposed to be like.
Hmm.
The fallacy in there is, how would you know, or why should you even know what your life is supposed to be like, what things you should follow to be successful, when it comes from people who do not know your life best?
Hmm. Hmm.
My problem with people asking me or anyone how to be successful is that there seems to be an incessant and increasing need of trying out shortcuts, trying out ways to hack the system. You can hack everything. If there's a system, the truth is you can hack a system, but would you be happy hacking your own life? How, why do people want so much control over their own lives, over their own futures? And it boils down to fear. It boils down to uh, the constant feeling of being left out in the experiences that all the other folks are having. Back to my point about knowledge. Um, you have a lot of conversations, and I've seen there are like three kinds of folks. First are the kinds who um, like knowledge because it helps making conversation. Like folks who like collecting a lot of um, party facts. So you throw a fact, then you get someone intrigued, and you get in conversation with them. The other kind of folks are folks who like talking about the knowledge without really understanding it. And the third kind of folks are the folks that I just talked about, folks who are trying to hack the system, who are trying to get the best kind of knowledge and then live their lives through that set line. Yeah. But life doesn't work out that way. Life and knowledge, I'm sure, given your years and years of experience on the field as a strategist, as an economist, you must have seen reality can play out really weirdly. The theorems, the laws, the stats, all of them can, get lopsided and fall over their heads when some variables go out of control. And like, we can bring in multiple fields to explain this. We can bring in chaos theory, we can bring in multiple things to explain why things like that happen. But essentially, the meaning of being smart, the meaning of being smart really is being able to think on your feet. The fundamental problem with, university education, the way people are approaching knowledge, is people are outsourcing their own knowledge to frameworks, theorems, and books. In my field, a lot of people will study Thinking Fast and Slow by Mr. Kahneman. And I'm sure nobody even finishes the book. Most people read through first 30, 50 pages, 70 pages. Um, and I'm absolutely, I love the fact that people even read 70 pages, and my absolute respect to people who read the entire book. That's a lot of knowledge. But just reading that book does not mean one understands human behavior in its entirety. Similarly, you can read 10,000 different books, and that makes you a lot more knowledgeable than you were the day before. But it doesn't mean life, reality, or the complexity in which we live is not going to throw things at you which you haven't tried before. It will always do that. It will always do that. And that's where I take issue with the way people are approaching knowledge, people are approaching university education today. We're looking at folks, and that's also how sciences today are being practiced. That's also how sciences today, in universities, that's how even papers are being approached. I've had a decent amount of academic experience, and from what I understand, sciences in the 90s, in the 1900s, especially the first half and around the 40s, um, and most of the Nobel prizes that were giving out, they were being given out not because people would validate something that was said before, but because people would be innovative enough to craft new kinds of experiments, to craft new kinds of, statistical approaches, to craft new forms of um, experiment designs and hypothesis about, you know all sorts of stuff that was there. But because there's a certain kind of pressure on universities today, when you look at university rankings, there's a certain kind of pressure of an academic to have an academic output, to have a certain amount of, research papers being published out there. It's a lot of validation that's going on. It's a lot of, oh, a study was done at some other place, and now I was able to also run the same study, confirm the same things, validate the same hypothesis. That's it, and now that's a paper published. And this trait is not limited to academia, also strategy. When a lot of folks are going out there trying to, commission research work in terms of, uh, to different firms about what they want to do, this is what they feel about the project, the product, the kind of communication that they want to do. All of them come with hypothesis, and more often than not, when you want to retain clients, you want to make them feel good. And this is not coming from, just mere speculation. I've talked to other folks who are in research, who are getting paid for it. There's certain kind of pressure from the other functionings of a department, that if you want to retain someone, you want to make them feel good even about their hypothesis. What does the sum of everything that I discussed right now, what does that do to knowledge building? It cripples the system. We're looking at people who want validation. We're looking at people who want structures to success. We're looking at people who want frameworks to solve problems of a really complex world. And we're looking at folks who are scared to fail. That's the perfect concoction to create a society that's too scared to experiment, that's too scared to innovate, and that's too scared to face new knowledge that can destabilize what people already know. And that's a pressing question that I keep thinking about on a daily basis, that I keep discussing with a lot of new folks that I meet. That, what do you mean when you say you want to be successful? What do you mean when you say you want to acquire knowledge? What do you mean when you say you want to solve things? And yeah, so that would be my introductory rambling. But yeah, suppose, do let me
Okay,
know if you
it's
had.
a very deeply, it looks very practical, but it's actually deeply philosophical. What you're saying is actually deeply philosophical. And it's not my role to actually comment too much on what people say in this thing, but I'll add just a couple of points which I, your education has shifted from being artisanal to art industrial. Okay. We have to educate a huge number of people with limited resources. And so it has to be industrialized. It's like a modern production system. And there's only so much creativity that is possible because you need a standardized output. And employers also want a standardized output. So the point of it is basically job skilled people. That's what education has come down to. And we respond to the needs of the marketplace. That look, this is a kind of successful means for young people. Go to a college where the placement is good and you get a job. Okay, fine. That's what the family needs. That's what you need. And unless we change the nature of the demand from the employers, we are not going to be able to change the nature of the educational system, because that's what the jobs are. That's where the jobs are, and that's what you get. And that's what the parents want, because some of them are poor. They're investing in their kids' education. They don't want some fancy education where the kid doesn't get a job. They want a job, some job. So people call vocational education, but actually all education in India is vocational, job oriented. Everywhere it's the norm now that especially you have a large number of young people, and India has the demographic bulge. And how are you going to handle this? So you standardize it and you uh, end up with lack of creativity. But then where the teachers aren't creative, the employers also say, forget what you learned, now I'll teach you everything. So
Correct.
it's anyway, so it's pointless trying to fiddle over there. Now, you can set up a few alternative schools and colleges and so on. They can do all this. But I don't see how you can change in any cost effective way. As an economist, without doubling or tripling the resources, you are not going to get uh, creativity. So I'll leave that thought with you, that look,
Yeah.
think about the
Yeah.
economics of it. The economics of
So
it is that some of the universities in India, I mean, you are from Bihar, so I'll talk to you. You can't get a 3-year degree in 3 years because they don't hold the exams on time. What can you do?
yeah,
Because the universities are, the politicians don't care, nobody cares. Universities are just there to say, I'm a student, okay? And even if you are a serious student, you're not going to get anywhere from those colleges and universities. Nobody cares. So that is a total under expenditure, right? So,
I actually gave. Thank you for bringing that in, because as I've been thinking about this stuff, um, mm, I had to bring in the economics of it. I had to bring in a lot of socio-cultural aspects to it, and the key lies in culture. The key really is in culture. So recently, for a certain project, I traveled around for my team technically traveled around for to 8 different cities in the country, and we were trying to figure out a bunch of things, including the meaning of what premiumization means for India, and if there are multiple different cultural nuances to it. Now, one of the most fundamentally mind-bending things, and it's obvious when one is Indian, to us, is the way we look at jobs, the way a Gujarati looks at a job, the way a Assamese guy looks at a job, the way a person born and brought up in Bangalore looks at a job, and the way a person who grew up in Lucknow, let's say a Patna, looks at a job, are fundamentally different. Now we can talk about the economics. We can certainly talk about the economics of it, if it's a place which is close to a coast, if it's a place which has a history of having merchants, if it's a place which has been plagued by invasions. All of those things come together to shape the culture of a place, which has a natural affinity to certain skills, values, and ethos. When we look at Gujaratis, they've always had that, outside influence. The Parsis would come in and say, "कि मैं शक्कर की तरह मिल जाऊंगा." ठीक है? You've always had that influence. You've always had that relationship. You've always known dhanda zaruri hai. Whereas a place like Lucknow, or a place like Patna, which have been historically seats of power for the country, and even today hold a lot of power, because there's a lot of seat, a lot of Lok Sabha seats coming from those places. The meaning of power and the meaning of success is very different. It's not dhanda. When we look at folks who have who grew up in, let's say, Chennai, or a Bangalore, for them the meaning of success means building something which is outside of their family business, yet better than that. You don't want to go too away from family. You're still very traditional, but you're still innovative. Why is that? Because your history has been full of abundance. And then you look at people from the northeast, from people from Orissa, and I'll include Patna in that. These are places who have a history of scarcity. And when you have scarcity, you would always be very safety oriented. And I started talking about it in the beginning. So economics is one lens to look at it, as a sociology, as a psychology. But all of that forms the culture of a place. One has to be able to tap into what cultural pressures are there for the people in the city and the people migrating out of it, and what kind of resources can they tap into. If one is able to just create that Venn diagram overlap, it's good enough. And with that I mean, yes, folks want jobs. Yes, universities need to prepare folks for jobs, but are they doing that? Exactly my point, right? You're looking at chemical engineers who are learning software engineering their final year, because they know jobs are in software. So if what can you really train folks for? I mean, sure, you can train folks in skills, train folks in all of that stuff, but essentially you're trying to produce clerks. You're trying to produce people who can get a job done. Sure, any employer wants that. But if that was the only thing needed, then why would the employers need a whole training session, a whole year long unlearning phase? Why would any employer have to tell a student or a fresh employee, forget everything that you have learned? And that's a statement that comes up very often. It's the culture that we've built. It's the different cultures that different people come from, and our resistance. Creativity is not only a function of liberty. I agree, a lot of artists are created from very wealthy families, but creativity is also an outcome of scarcity. Why do we have jugaad at all in India? The fact that we have jugaad as a culture is because we didn't have the means to actually get the right thing, so we figured out how to do it from all the different ways. And that didn't come from a place of luxury or liberty. That came from a place of scarcity and need. Creativity can exist in isolation of these aspects. That's just a human trait. Creativity is a function of being a person. It's triggered by situations. Now, creativity, the ability to take calculated risks and innovation, can be baked into a culture. When a culture feels safe enough, when a culture feels it would be prepared for a job if it gets into an institution, and I'm saying prepared, not eligible. The problem is people feel the moment they get into a university they also get jobs. That's why we have a lot of unemployed graduates in India. It's the different mindsets that have been built over time, because having a degree in the 80s certainly meant having a job. Having a degree, a postgraduate degree in the 2010s 15th, meant certainly having a job. It doesn't mean the same thing today. Things shift, culture shift, but our knowledge systems do not move. And that's the problem that I'm trying to highlight. I'm trying to highlight the very fact that these things can be baked into a culture, and cultures feel a certain way about themselves, be it because of the environment, ecology, economics, the collective psyche, and those things can be influenced. And mere influence is good enough. You do not have to spend huge budgets and all of that. You just have to influence a culture enough to feel safe enough about itself to have the ability to take risks. Once we're able to do that, and if we bake into our university system how to make people more employable, moving them away from the entitlement that merely having education qualifies them to have a job. You fix these two things, and the country shifts, and the country shifts in a constructive way. So, yeah, that's really what I want to put forward.
Beautiful. I'm glad to hear such a deeply thought out message from a young person of your age. I'm sure that you will develop it over time and find some practical ways to implement it. Okay, some, because hardly anybody can shift the whole college education system in India. It's too big a topic for anyone. Even the government can't shift it, because ultimately it depends upon what the teachers are like, the staff, and the staff are what they are. I think the
Yeah,
only
it's a
way
matter of
out
culture.
is to find small channels that can reflect these ideas, and through uh, the internet offer opportunities for people to learn in different ways and study in different ways. Right now, what we are doing is through the internet turning the physical into the digital, right?
Yeah,
But we are not really exploring what can be done in the digital that was not possible in the physical. And this
yeah.
channel is one such attempt on my part to say, look, what was not possible in the physical, let's do it in the digital. I think you will find a way to create things in a digital environment which were not possible in the physical environment, because the mindset of the policy makers is still in the physical environment, and they
I've
just
been
translate that into the digital. But you young people like you can think digitally.
I'm not too sure about that, honestly, because I've been looking at a lot of research, a lot of reports, a lot of startups that actually tried, doing alternate schools. One of the most prominent names that I know of is Stoa, and I absolutely loved what they were trying to do in India. They were trying to form alternate MBA schools, and I have a lot of respect for their founders, but they recently shut down. Um, Keeping that company aside, the name aside, the way I feel is again, I want to bring this conversation back to culture, because the more I work, the more I realize, as I work in strategy and as I work in development, automobile, vaccines, all of that, I've realized we may not be able to see the fruits of, we may not be able to see foundational fundamental change within the spans of our own lifetimes, but a push towards shifting culture,
Hmm.
a push see, okay, I'll make it sound very practical. Let's not go into the philosophy at all. Let's talk on the practicalities. Why does someone s- make safe choices in life? Because they have a very strong incessant perception of threat. If you feel like, look at a young person, look at a person like me, and so I was working on a project regarding chewing tobacco in India, how to make people quit that. A lot of folks actually stopped chewing gutka when they had a daughter, when they had a child, when they got married, because the way they perceive their own threat, the way they perceive what kind of threats are there in their life actually increases. But be it a young, if it's a young person who's 21, 22, they have no reason at all to quit. So the way we perceive dangers in our own life shift, and it's called risk appetite. It shifts our risk appetite. The country has seen a lot of destabilization, be it like post independence, be it during the 90s, when we ran out of our gold reserves. The country has seen a lot of instability, and now it definitely feels a lot of communal tensions are out there. When you have a sense of threat all around you, you are bound to make safer choices. When you keep making safer choices long enough, you start following patterns which are tried and tested. Higher the threat, the more you'll stick to those patterns. Lower the threat, there would be a higher opportunity to test if there are other patterns, other ways of living, other ways of approaching things that can be tested out in the first place. So, what are we looking at? We're looking at trying to figure out ways in which we can lower the amount of threat that the society, that the collective, that the different cultures that exist in India, be it students, activists, politicians, uh, job seekers, and employees, experience on a daily basis. If we optimize towards a society that's tuned in towards reducing threat, you're not just making people more innovative, you're improving health. You're lowering blood pressure levels. You are lowering risk of heart attack. You're lowering uh, the amounts of anxiety that people go through on a daily basis. The net effect of lowering a single level of behavior in the society has a large foundational impact. Now we can still talk about if it's practical or not, I mean there are ways to do, there are methods to do it. One of the foundational ways to do it, I'll bring it down to one simple example. Um, so mental health is quite big in day-to-day conversations, especially the Gen Z is talking about it. A lot of people are actually threatened that and sometime back, like let's say 15 years ago, a lot of people, a lot of employees were actually scared of talking about their mental health conditions at their workplace because they would be perceived as incompetent and therefore they would lose their job. The whole narrative has flipped over today because the push towards the kind of safety one can experience regarding their mental health in a workplace made them feel more comfortable talking about it and taking a leave for a day or two to feel better about themselves and then coming back better at the job. So the push is possible. And because I've thought so much about it, I feel at the core of it there's this sense of threat. And there are practical ways to actually deal with it. And thank you for this platform because I hope more people hear this out, think about it, and use the different ways, their different fields to actually understand how threat works, threat perception works in all their different places. And yeah, let's hope that works out.
Well, thank you, Utkarsh. You validated my reason for setting up this channel because, as I told you, the premise is that young people are good, they have their own minds, they should have a channel to put forward their views. And you have done that. No, I have not heard what you said from anybody before, and I have now heard 700 young people. Nobody has talked the way you have talked, which just means that this is the way it is. Everybody has some particular view or so on, and they want to talk about it. And good. Okay, so let's end it here today, unless you have something, last few words that I always say, last words are yours to have.
I'm grateful for this opportunity, and whoever listens, whoever views this video, and I'll be sure to share this. Um, do think about how you can make your places safer. Do think about how you can make societies, cultures,
Mm,
workplaces feel safer because it has far-reaching effects.
mm.
First, secondly, thank you so much, Mr. Sabodh, for doing this because. If not everyone in India, this certainly is an archive of what the youth was thinking
Yeah.
in the in 2023, 24, 25, 26, for
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who come in 2040s,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to look back and listen to this and understand what the youth was really feeling, and if
Yeah.
that has shifted at all.
Right. Right. Right.
This would be a good marker to look at.
Okay. It's a time capsule.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So
All
thank
right.
you so much for doing
All
this.
right, good.
And yeah,
Let's end it here. I want to talk to you offline. So I need
yeah,
to have some time for that. So let's say goodbye to the viewers and listeners, and I'll be
all
back
right.
with another young
Thank you
person
so much.
or an expert soon. Till then, bye, everybody.